So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speakers. So welcome back, Brian Galbraith. Always nice to see you. Brian is the owner of Galbraith Family Law and has been practicing since 1990. His firm has 19 lawyers and 4 offices, all specializing in family law. He is the past president of the International Academy of Collaborative Professionals and a leader in the collaborative community. Brian is an international trainer and keynote speaker, and he lives on Lake Simcoe near Barrie with his wife and 5 children. So thanks so much again, Brian, for joining us. We are also joined by Christina. Hi, Christina. Christina Garisto is a lawyer at Galbraith Family Law. She's been practicing law since 2014. Christina is on the board of the Elizabeth Fry Society, and she does many ICs at the firm and enjoys doing peacemaking work, especially on collaborative cases. Christina lives with her husband in Oro, which is a rural community between Barrie and Orillia. Thanks so much. We're so happy to have you. And we're also joined by Alex. Hi, Alex. Great to see you again.
Morning.
Alexander Beadie is also a lawyer at Galbraith Family Law. He's been practicing since 1986 and is focused solely on family law since 2015. Prior to joining Galbraith Family Law, he worked as a criminal defense lawyer and was corporate counsel for Honda. Alex enjoys doing collaborative cases and does many of the initial consultations for the firm, and he lives in Toronto with his wife. So without further ado, I will pass it over to you, Brian, to get started with your presentation.
All right, so you have our slideshow, I hope. Can you see that?
Yeah, it looks fantastic.
Okay, great. Well, in 2024, news about AI dominated the news cycle. It's been heralded as being possibly a bigger change than the Industrial Revolution, right? And even greater than the advent of electricity, maybe even the internet or the smartphone. But it's also generated a lot of fear. The fear is that AI will replace lawyers, financial professionals, and family professionals. Professionals around the world are worried about AI. So the question is, will lawyers have a job in the future? Will we be relevant going forward, having regard to AI? Now, the worry about ChatGPT was elevated when it was revealed that ChatGPT passed the American bar exam with a score in the 90th percentile. I mean, that's kind of the score Russell Alexander might get, right? So, I mean, it's incredible. And it had completed the test in just 6 minutes. So that's probably faster than Russ. So ChatGPT is fast, smart, and a real threat. But you know what? I don't see it as a threat. I don't see it as a threat. The fear reminds me of the situation when accountants started to have spreadsheets on computers. That was a revolution in the accounting world. And the accountants were worried that their jobs would completely disappear. And it had a huge impact. No doubt it did. But they didn't disappear, did they? They became more efficient, more productive and accurate in their data collection and analysis, and they continued to provide good value to their clients by offering advice, projections, and so on. And I believe that AI is going to do the same for us. It's a tool we can leverage to do our jobs better, faster, more accurately, and will lead to efficiencies. Goldman Sachs believes that 37% of tasks conducted by lawyers will be improved by AI. So how are we going to use it? Well, it's going to be used for improved communications, using chatbots and so on to give updates on cases. It's going to be used for document analysis and summary. AI is really good at creating summaries of documents. It's going to be used for drafting documents. Obviously, it can look at all of your pool of documents and create documents in the same in the same voice and in the same way that you create documents. I use it almost every day when creating emails and correspondence. It helps improve the tone and accuracy of my communications. And of course, it can be used in research and e-discovery. We're seeing a lot of the major players in the legal research realm starting to develop AI components to their programs. So this is great, I think, and it'll lead to increased efficiency, which means increased productivity. But there's some bad news. Yeah, that means we're going to be so much more efficient. We're going to have decreased billable hours and costs. So what does that mean? It means to respond to decreased billable hours. You know, if we can produce a document in 20 minutes that used to take us 3 hours, then we're going to have the afternoon is going to be free. What are we going to do with our time? And we can't bill, for 3 hours of time if we're only spending 20 minutes creating a document. So the answer, I think, is that we need to increase the number of clients that we have, and we'll be able to do that because we're going to be more affordable. And so I think that results in a greater access to justice. More people will be able to avail our services as professionals. And I think that's a really good thing. My prediction is that we'll be serving more people for less cost, thus increasing our access to justice. According to the World Justice Project, 77% of people with legal issues do not get professional help. So that's a vast untapped market of people who would benefit from our services. AI will make it possible for us to provide services to more and more people as we become more and more efficient and effective. But what does all this mean to legal professions? I believe this is a golden opportunity we have with AI. But let's all remember that humans crave human connection, right? Humans crave human connection, and we're all human, except maybe Russ. I don't know. He's kind of robotic. But we all need to learn to develop our skills at connecting with our clients. We need to provide the human connection clients crave. So I'm on a journey. I've been on a journey for a long time to get better at connecting with clients and, well, in fact, with all human beings, to get better and have a deeper connection. And so let me share with you what I've learned so far. When I was a teenager, I read a book called I'm Okay, You're Okay. And it really started me thinking about the psychology of human beings. It was a tremendous book for me as a kid, as a teenager. My father gave me a book that I read, and it's still relevant today. It's called by Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. How to Win Friends and Influence People. It was written many years ago. Still, the themes of it are really relevant and helpful. But the most important book I ever read, and that's the one you're seeing on the screen, is Getting to Yes. It's just a seminal book by Harvard professors Roger Fisher and William Ury. It was first published back in 1981. Seems like many years ago now, but it outlines how interest-based negotiations work. And hundreds of studies have since confirmed that interest-based negotiation really works well for people. So when I read this book, it blew my mind and changed every conversation and every negotiation going forward. My most recent discovery, the next mind-blowing book for me, is Charles Duhigg's book called Super Communicators. And Alex and Christina and I have all read it and digested it. I've read it 3 times and I could read it again. It's an incredible book, and I encourage you to read it. We're going to talk about super communicators because I think that's the key to us as a profession getting through this whole AI thing is honing in on what we do as human beings to create connection. And of course, that is being a good communicator. We do surveys of our clients all the time, and survey after survey after survey, when clients are happy, it's because of our communication. And when clients are unhappy, it's because of our communication. Communication is key to providing good service. So, Shannon, maybe you can ask the first survey question. I'll stop sharing the first two questions, please. So, how to become a super no. Yeah, have you read the book Getting to Yes? So just click on your screen if you've read it or not yet, but I will put it on my list to read. I don't read books. I'm already too smart. That might be Russ's answer. I'm not sure. I love coming to these seminars so I can get the mic and just tease Russ all the time. Okay, maybe are we ready to show the results? Of course, well, 23% have read it, 74% not yet, and 3% are just already too smart. I get it, I get it. Okay, yeah, I really encourage you to read it. So let's go to the next question. Have you read the book Super Communicators by Charles Duhigg? Yes, no, not yet. It's in a pile of books beside my bed. I don't read. I listen to books, and it's on my list to do. I read. I listen to books. That's how I consume most books, for sure. We'll wait a little bit more. Is that good, Shannon? Shall we post the results? No, 85% have not yet. Well, no, 96% have not. Wait, 100% have not read this book. Well, you know what? That's okay. This will be good new information for you. And I'm not surprised because you can close the results there, Shannon. Because this book was published this year in 2024. So if you haven't read the book, that makes sense. That's okay. But put it on your list of things to read. Okay, I'll go back to the slideshow. And okay. Yeah, it was published in 2024. And let me tell you a little bit about Charles Duhigg, the author. He's published a couple of other great books, The Power of Habit and Smarter, Faster, Better. He worked as a journalist and then did an MBA at Harvard. Pretty smart guy. But then he was put in charge of a complicated project at work where he had to supervise a lot of people. And he realized he was not very good at his job because of his lack of communication skills. So he started doing research on communication, and he spoke to many experts and read research papers. And 3 years later, he published this book. The thing I like about this book is it's so full of references to academic research on the various topics. It's not just one man's rambling about the thought about communication. It's based on scientific research. So I really think it's credible and worth us taking our time to read it and consume it. So one of the first things he says of super communicators is our goal is to have a learning conversation. So we understand each other. It's not about persuading or manipulating others. Those lessons are taught in other workshops in this. No, we're not going to teach that at all. The goal is to truly understand each other. This doesn't mean you have to agree with each other, just understand each other. And if a client feels that that you understand them, they will trust you and retain you and to help them through their divorce. When tough decisions have to be made, they'll seek your advice. They'll be happier with your services. It'll lead to more referrals. It'll lead to Google reviews. You're going to make more money. Your sex life will improve. It's going to change your life. Okay, well, maybe not, but it's really a good book and will help. I think it's improved my skills as a communicator, and I hope you learned from our discussion. Christina and Alex have certainly become even better communicators because of this book. The first lesson is he talks about uh, uh, working to get deep connection on a deeper level. True alignment, he calls, or the science calls, neurological synchronization. And that means our bodies actually become aligned. Everything from how fast we breathe to our brain waves all become synchronized. Duhigg references some research on musicians, and when they started playing duets, the musicians' brain waves actually synchronized through the music. They became one. Now, my wife and her sisters do this all the time. When they're together, their conversations speed up, their eyes sparkle, they start to finish each other's sentences. It's something to see. Me and my two brothers, when we get together, it's more like three monologues in a room. We're not super communicators. We don't sync with one another like my wife and her two sisters. So how do you do that? How do you deliberately learn the skills? Well, Duhigg says you can deliberately learn the skills to be a super communicator. First, he said super communicators ask 10 to 20 times more questions. 10 to 20 times more questions than regular communicators. Not just questions to seek a fact, but rather questions that ask about others' values and their beliefs and to get at what we always call interests, right? What's important, what's motivating people. So you think about your best friend who you're having a really bad day and you call them up. I bet you call that person up because they ask you questions. They want to know more. They want to hear from you. They want to understand what's going on in your life. You don't call the guy who's all focused on themselves, your narcissistic friend. No, you don't call them. You call the friend who wants to ask questions. Second, super communicators constantly adjust how they communicate to match the other person. So I know you know about questions. That's not new. But this is interesting. Well, I thought this was an interesting thing that Duhigg talks about, is that we need to work to match the other person. If the other person's mood or attitude shifts, super communicators follow suit. I continue to work on developing my skills. I did a consultation with a man the other day. He recently discovered that his husband had been cheating on him. A part of him was devastated, and another part was deeply hurt. But there was also this overwhelming love that he had for his husband. He said he was just sad. It was a really difficult conversation for this gentleman, but I practiced my skills. And when he laughed, I matched his laugh. And I just kept trying to understand him, his pain and what he was experiencing. When he said he was sad, I repeated back to him exactly what I heard him say, matching his slow tone and moving my voice deeper like he did. You are just sad. When I said that, my client's eyes teared up because we were really connecting on a deeper level because I was matching him in what he was saying. He could hear in my voice that I genuinely wanted to understand him. We were two human beings connecting. It was really cool. And I knew that if we were connecting in this conversation, he would trust me and retain me and allow me to help him resolve the issues from his marriage. But you can't mimic it. You got to be really genuine about it. Duhigg says that there's studies where people are giving recordings of laughs, and some are genuine laughs, some are fake laughs. and people can distinguish one from the other within 5 seconds. So you got to be genuine about it and really sincere in it, in your effort to match with your client. Laughing. That's a really important part of this book. Duhigg discusses laughing extensively. Did you know that 80% of the time when people laugh, it's not because of a joke or someone intentionally trying to get someone to laugh? Laughing is a signal by one person to another that they want to connect. It's a signal. Back to my wife, Nicole. She laughs all the time. And I definitely not at my jokes. Usually she groans. But she is a super communicator. And she's laughing because she wants to break the tension. She wants people to feel comfortable. She is saying through her laugh that she wants to connect with you. Now I understand. Alex, have you ever used laughter in your meetings with clients?
Yes, thanks, Brian. Great comments, and I too find that adding humor where I can during the course of our day-to-day practice is really appreciated by the clients. Those little interludes break tension, they open the opportunities to more deeply connect. There's a good example that occurred to me the other day. It was a YouTube clip that I saw. And in the midst of a conversation with a potential new client about her parenting challenges and when her daughter was younger and in her adolescent years, how difficult, the communication between them had become. And I told her about this YouTube clip. It was a mother who was at the border making crossing arrangements with her young adolescent daughter. And the border crossing agent turned to the young girl and said, "Is this your mother?" And the young girl responded by saying, "I hate her." And so the border crossing agent said to the mother, "That's okay, ma'am, you can go. You're clearly the mother." And so this raised laughter with this potential new client at a time when she was feeling the burden of the strain of the conversation, and we were able to move on with that conversation more deeply connected. So yes.
Christina, how about you?
Yeah, same here. I also like to break tension with humor sometimes. I just find it makes people feel more comfortable with me, and it kind of puts them at ease. I know people will often get really nervous when they come to me for an initial consultation. I've heard numerous times that they feel like they're going to the doctor's office, or they feel like they're about to receive bad news right when they first come in. So I could like to joke with them, don't worry about it. I'm not very intimidating. I'm maybe 5 feet tall. I rarely bite. Just to kind of put them at ease, make them more comfortable. Then you can literally sometimes like just see the tension leave their shoulders, and they do become more relaxed. So I really do find that humor works.
Yeah, and the thing about Duhigg's book is we've all think back and we think, okay, yeah, we do use humor from time to time, but he's saying this is a tool that you can deliberately use and choose to use to deepen your communication. So I'm going to play a short video of oh yeah, oh good. Actually, we'll wait for this if that's all right. Wait for the poll. I'll tell you when the poll comes up. Okay, I'm going to show a video of a father and his baby laughing. Watch for what he does to match his baby. This is a remarkable example of matching, because this dad I think he's probably a super communicator. I don't know who the guy is. I hope he can keep this level of communication with his child when his child becomes a teenager. That's when it becomes challenging. But okay, let's play this video and see what your thoughts are on that. Okay, several things to notice here. First, how do you feel? You know, I could see Alex and Christina's face, and they started to smile. Do you feel a little lighter, a little more open? Do you feel like your defenses have gone down a little bit? You know, that's what humor does. Like a laughter, just for a moment or two can really be contagious, and it's involuntary sometimes. It's a really good tool that we can deliberately use in our meetings to be more effective as communicators. The father and baby were totally synced, weren't they? Notice that the father laughed in the same way as the baby. Sometimes it was a wholehearted laugh, sometimes it was a giggle. He held his mouth open the same way as the baby. The tone of the voices are the same. And so they're really connecting, and they're connecting without words, right? They're connecting through laughter, so I think this is a really good example of becoming synchronized. I bet if we could analyze their brain waves would be totally synced. And that's what our goal should be with our clients when we're meeting them, is to sync with them, match what they're doing so that you can connect. Okay, let's ask the survey question now. Do you use humor in your client meetings? Yes, I use it often and it's effective, occasionally when appropriate, or almost never. I know some people would feel uncomfortable using humor, and yeah, you got to be careful the kind of humor you use. You don't want to offend somebody or alienate them. But if you can and you don't want to belittle them through humor, it's a nuanced skill, but something that's worthwhile. Okay, let's show the results, Shannon. 37% use it often, 61 regularly, occasionally when appropriate, and 2% almost never. Great, thank you. Let's keep going. To align during conversations, Duhigg says we need to identify what type of conversation we are having. There are 3 types of conversation. Alex, what's the first one?
Yeah, practical is that first one. It's what's this conversation really about? What do you want? What do I want as a result of having the conversation? How are we going to resolve it? A real nuts and bolts approach that's focused on outcome and process.
Great. Yeah, practical conversations. Yeah. Christina, what's yours?
Second is emotional conversations. So how are they feeling overall about their situation? How are they feeling in that moment? And that can change. So recognizing that, their worries, their fears, sensitivity, sadness, anger, and also kind of their hopes and dreams for the futures. So essentially their feelings.
Right, feelings. And then the third one is social, and that's who we are. It's a discussion about our identity as a human being. So if your client wants to have a practical conversation, Duhigg says you need to have that practical conversation. If they want an emotional one, engage in an emotional conversation. You have to use the style of conversation that your client wants. So I'm going to play another quick video that illustrates this really well. It's called "It's Not About the Nail," and I hope you get a little giggle and see you learn something from it.
It's just, there's all this pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me, and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless, and I don't know if it's gonna stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever gonna stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
Yeah, see, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See, you're
out.
not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just... sometimes it's like there's this achy, I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
That sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Come on, if you would just
Don't.
Try to see things my way. Do I have to keep on talking?
So that's an interesting video, I think, because you could see that she wanted to have an emotional conversation, and he really wanted to have a practical conversation. She wanted him to understand how terrible it is that all of her sweaters are snagged because of life for her with a nail in her head. And she just wanted him to understand that the trials and tribulations, he wanted to have a practical conversation. And look how they synced up together when he did have the type of conversation she wanted. Things were going well. But then when he reverted to his old ways and wanted to talk about the practical conversation, that's when they had problems again. So a good lesson, good illustration of choosing to have the type of conversation your client wants to have. Okay. Practical conversations are about what your client wants. What do they want to talk about? You know, their issues in a practical level. So I'll tell you an example. The first was a consultation I did with a woman, and she had questions about her rights and obligations and possible solutions to her situation. The next was a man. He had no interest in the law or process. He just wanted to discuss his feelings about the relationship. Both had been married about 25 years and were in similar situations, but they each wanted a different type of conversation. So I had the type of conversation they wanted so that we could align and learn from each other. Duhigg describes a story of a physician, I think this is really interesting, who treated men for prostate cancer. And the medical research indicates that in 97% of cases, the best course is not to have an operation. Yet this doctor was not able to persuade his patients that surgery was not the best route to take. He gave them medical articles and charts and graphs, and many still chose to have the operation against his advice. He just wasn't connecting with his clients, with his patients, I mean. So he sought out some advice and then changed his approach. He started to ask the patients what they wanted to talk about, what they valued, what was on their minds. Most of the time, the patients did not care about the medical research. They had other concerns like what would be the best choice to minimize the worry for their wife and kids. When the doctor started asking open-ended questions and getting to know his clients and what they wanted to talk about, he was able to guide them away from surgery more often. But he had to first connect with them during their conversations. Alex, have you ever had an experience with practical conversations?
Yeah, I've had similar experiences in this shift of the conversation that you're having. I had a client the other day. We started off on the basis of a practical conversation about constructive trusts. But upon further probing, it was revealed that this client really wanted to have a social conversation about her concerns, that her spouse would reveal afflictions that she had with alcohol abuse. And therefore, as a nurse, she was concerned about her reputation and the damage that might do. And so the nature of the conversation shifted. And I found that in acknowledging that with her, discovering that and acknowledging that, the level of our conversation just went much more deeper and therefore became much more practical and effective.
Yeah. It could, because you shifted, right, from that practical conversation about rights and so on into the social one about her identity. And that, I must have appreciated that and felt like, oh, this guy's really listening to me. He cares about me. And I trust this guy.
Yeah.
Christina, what about you?
Same here. I had a client who was a Honda shift worker, and we were discussing parenting time. And he was his only concern around parenting time was that the parenting time schedule could accommodate his shift work. He was worried about hours and minutes, and that's it. He didn't want to have any discussion around his identity as a father, or how that identity would change after separation, his emotions around parenting, or anything like that. It was all practical elements about his shift work. So I had to meet him where he was at, because I enjoy talking about emotions and feelings, but nope, he didn't want that. So I had to meet him where he was at, and that led to a deeper connection between him and I, and really to trust between us.
Yeah, that's and that's so good that you recognize that your inclination is, oh, I'd rather have that emotional conversation, right? But that's not about me as the lawyer, as the professional. It's about the client. What does the client want to talk about, right? And this guy, it was all about the practicalities of accommodating parenting and shift work, right? Yeah, great. Okay. Another thing that Duhigg pulls from the research are that there's two styles of decision making. I thought this was fascinating. The first one is, well, the logic of costs and benefits. This is not new. We all know about this as professionals. We do this every day. What are the costs of the potential costs? What potential benefits of various options and solutions? And we logically weigh the cost versus the benefits before we make a decision. So this wasn't new. This is something we do every day. But he talked about a second way called the logic of similarities. This is very different to me, at least. This was a revelation. In this decision-making process, facts are less important and less persuasive. Reason and logic are not used. In this process, our clients ask themselves a question. What does someone like me usually do in a situation like this? So what does someone like me usually do in a situation like this? These folks love to hear stories and share stories, and they appreciate compassion and understanding. So I remember a collaborative case I had, which did not go well. My client was alleged to have had drug issues and being a bit of a negligent parent due to his drug abuse. And I explained that we came up with a plan for staged time with his children. That if it was a minimal at first, if it went well, then it would get better. And if it continued to get better, well, then it would increase again. And I explained to him that a judge would likely err on the side of caution, would want him to prove that he's drug-free, and that a court process would probably take 6 months to get before a judge to get started. And the whole case would probably take, maybe 2 years before it was resolved. It would cost him a fortune. And he would miss time with his kids. I saw no benefit to going to court. I didn't see that any way that he would do better in court, and it would just cost him more money and delay the process. But he terminated the case and he went to court. I couldn't figure it out. It did not make sense to me until I read Duhigg's book. And then I think this guy, this is my guess now, is that he was using the logic of similarities. Maybe he was seeing himself as a fighter. A fighter would go to court and battle it out. He was an entrepreneur and he'd always done battle all through his life to get to where he was. And so I think, if I thought of that, if I thought that was how he was making this decision, then I could have had different discussions with him. I wouldn't have done the cost benefit analysis. I would be talking to him about how he's made decisions in the past and what he's inclined to do as a person who's a fighter, always been a struggler. I don't know. I think I could have had a different conversation and maybe helped him avoid court. I could have said, fighters are always strategic, and you got to know when to fight and when to settle to be effective, and talked about maybe similar situations where he'd settled matters sooner so that he could get a better result. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. Alex, have you ever had a situation like that?
Yeah, this insight from Duhigg has really been revealing for me too, because I've sometimes found myself, I don't think I'm alone in having found myself reverting into or defaulting into a fighting mode when a client presents in a fighting mode and about the fight. And sometimes that can even end up in me getting into a controversial position, even with the client, about this issue or that issue, which is exactly the reverse of where I want the conversation to go. I want to more deeply connect with that potential client or that client and not get into a fighting mode. And so this logic of similarities and understanding that, and therefore being able to work with that in these different ways has been really revealing. There was a personal anecdote, Brian, that I recently had the occasion to observe, which relates to you and your own communication. I happen to be privy to a dialogue between yourself and some other parties engaged in a certain conflict there. I was copied on the email and I watched how this unfolded. And there was an observation that you made there, which I found so profound and yet so simple. And it was a statement. Here it is. If you don't pick a fight, you won't get a fight.
Right.
I have since relayed that to clients and potential clients going forward to try and coach them to be sensitive to a position that they don't want to get into with their partner or a conversation with others, period, because they want to become more productive in their communications, and recognizing that is a real way to do it.
What about you, Christina? We have just a minute left.
Same here. And mine is kind of on the flip side, because I've had a few clients who will cave in. And we've had discussions about how they've caved in throughout their marriage, they've caved in throughout their life, they've compromised. So even though they may have a really strong case, they're willing to just give it up just to get it resolved. And so I have had discussions with them about, they have a history of caving in, and that shows up now when we're talking about their family law negotiations. I've had quite a few people, it's an odd scenario, but I've had quite a few clients who are stuck with an expensive car that they don't want because the spouse wanted it during their marriage and they got it, and now they're going to be paying, a monthly amount that is really too high for them. And they just cave in and say, oh, well, they'll figure it out. It's just they have an identity as a, someone who compromises, and that just continues.
Right. Yeah. Duhigg says that we're all taught to take the other person's perspective and show that we are empathetic. Instead, he says we need to ask more questions to understand the other person's perspective. So we're not perspective taking, we are perspective getting. The idea from Duhigg's material is that we need to ask deep questions so that we truly understand our client's emotional state, their values, beliefs, feelings, and their inner life. Of course, I've been using open questions for many years, but this is different. Deep questions come from the work of Elaine and Arthur Aaron. They discovered 36 deep questions. That's called the Fast Friends procedure. These questions are asked in order and answered by both persons. So you ask a question and then you answer the same question before moving on. So you can Google it. It's called 36 deep questions, and it's by Elaine and Arthur Aron. Aron is Aron. And they used these questions with a group of hedge fund managers. Now, hedge fund managers are not used to showing vulnerability. I don't mean to stereotype, but many are not used to being vulnerable. And they're generally used to yelling at each other and aggressively pursuing their goals. They were asked to form pairs at this conference, form a pair with someone they've never met before, and then ask 3 of these 36 questions. The researcher just dove right into it. And when the exercise began, something special happened. Many of these men and women began opening up. Some were crying, and it was quite remarkable. In fact, it was remarkable to the point that 2 of the hedge fund managers who met through this exercise at this conference started dating and eventually married each other. So it's pretty cool. So Christina and Alex, what examples of deep questions do you offer to get the client's perspective to understand who they are? Christine?
My favorite deep question is to ask a client, what does your life look like once your case settles? I don't want to assume their long-term goals, but I want to know what their long-term goals are so that I can set them up so that they can get there. I also find that asking this question makes them a lot more comfortable, and it puts them in a different frame of mind, right? They're not stuck on the nitty-gritty. It gets them forward thinking. That is hands down my favorite deep question to ask.
Yeah, and it's remarkable. I find when I ask it, it changes the whole dynamics with the client, right? Because they haven't been thinking about what life will look like when everything's resolved. And so all of a sudden you're giving them hope that there's going to be a better day, but you're starting to get to them to focus on what's important to them and their values, right? That's right. That's, I think what you're doing is you're saying, what's important to you? What do you want life to look like, right? That really is an expression of their values and priorities. Yep. Alex, any good questions that you use?
Well, to build on that one, tell me more about why that is important to you. Is a follow-up question that oftentimes yields more information. A good example is, well, I want to stay in the house. Well, why is it important to you to stay in the house is oftentimes a revealing direction for the conversation to take.
Yeah, and then I love that because you can say that first why question, but then you say, tell me more. Tell me more about why that's important. And that takes them to a deeper level. And it sometimes, I find, the clients are sometimes stumble, when you ask them to go a little bit deeper, but it's really revealing, and you're building that connection by asking those questions. One risk is that we assume we understand the client's perspective, right? When and we could be wrong. We need to ask. I'll tell you a quick story. I remember many years, 30 years ago, client came in and her child had been taken away from her by the CAS. And so during in conversation with her, I had assumed that she wanted to find a way to get her child back. And it wasn't until the end of the conversation that I realized my assumption was totally wrong. She knew she was not able to look after her young child. And all she really wanted at this point was to maintain a relationship, see the child occasionally so that she would have an opportunity to get her life together, clean up her drug addiction and all those sorts of things. So I felt so foolish that I had made that wrong assumption. What about you, Christine?
Yeah, mine is along the similar lines. I am really bad at this. When talking about parenting time, I assume that parents want 50-50 parenting time. And sometimes that is not their goal. And so I'm really working on putting that assumption aside and asking them, what do you want, right? It's not about what I want, it's about what the clients want. And yeah, that is my one big assumption. I'm always assuming 50-50 parenting time.
Yeah, and that's important. We need to be aware of our biases, right? So that we don't assume that somebody's going to have the same perspective as us. We have to ask, right? Yeah, that's great. How about you, Alex?
Yeah, I must say a lasting lesson that stayed with me. Brian is an anecdote that you related to me some time back about your earlier life experiences in working with and training quarter horses. And you explained in working with several different horses throughout the course of a day in those days, uh, you learned the lesson never to assume that any of the attributes exhibited by a previous horse were going to be repeated with the horse that you were on. You start from scratch. You don't make any assumptions about the way this horse is going to behave. Otherwise, you may get hurt. So you learned the lesson well. You passed it on to me. And as you explained then, it's the one lesson you've been able to, it's transportable. You've been able to apply that lesson to your own practice of family law. And I've learned from it too.
Yeah, that is a good lesson, before an initial consultation, I try to have a few moments. I read their intake forms. I understand there's the basic facts of the case, but I try to separate myself from all the other things that are going on and come into it. So you, as you said, to start from scratch, blank slate, blank page. Let me understand who you are and what your needs are. There was a question. I'll just answer this. There was a question. How do you deal with the client who won't talk? You ask an open question. You say, "Tell me about your life circumstance," and they say, "We're getting a divorce." And tell me about your children. We have 3. Right? So those are tough clients. So my answer to that is I start when I have a client like that, I start to sort of prime the pump. So what I do is I start asking direct questions and I say, okay, tell me about your children. How many children do you have? How old are the children? What are the activities of the children like? How are they feeling these days? Have you told them about the separation? Who's been involved in parenting the children? So these are not open-ended questions. These are closed questions. It's sort of like a cross-examination. But I get the client talking, prime the pump, and then I start to slip in, well, tell me more about the children, right? And then that's an open-ended question. And they're after they've been primed a little bit and they're talking and opening up a little bit, then they'll start to hopefully share more of themselves. But I think the key Duhigg would say is you need to connect with the person, and keep working on that neurological synchronization and have the type of conversation that they want to have so they feel comfortable and they trust you, and use laughter. There's lots of tools we've talked about that you can use to connect with the client. So when the client feels connection and trust, they're going to open up and share their perspective and their values, their priorities, and retain you, right? So that's a long answer to a short question. Okay, so let's ask the next survey question, Daphne or Shannon. Do you ever fall into the trap of assuming a client's perspective? Yeah, yes, I often make assumptions. Sometimes, but I try to remember to ask if I have it right. That's a really good question. If you think you've got their perspective, you offer it to the client, right? I understand that your goal is to build a relationship with your child, and you're not really wanting to remove the child from CAS's care. You want a relationship. Do I have it right? Because you might have it wrong. So that's a really good technique. No, I'm always very curious. Okay, let's see the results. Yes, I often make assumptions sometimes, but I try to remember to ask if I have it right. No, I'm always very curious. Well, for those 22% who are always curious, good on you. You're a super communicator, and that's where I hope to get one day as well, is to consciously always try to be curious and try and don't make assumptions. I don't want to fall into that trap. Okay, thanks. You can close the poll. We'll go on. So looping. Now, I was always taught that I should maintain eye contact and keep nodding my head when my client is telling me their story, or say things like, oh, I see, or something like that. Duhigg says the research suggests these gestures are not effective. Duhigg says we need to do more and we need to prove we are listening. So Duhigg is a big fan of looping to prove we are listening. This is something I'd never thought of. I've heard of looping, of course. It's a very much a traditional technique taught in mediation courses and in collaborative courses. But I've never understood it to be a way of proving that we're listening, and it's interesting. So, simple: ask a question, an open question, and then when you hear the answers, you summarize or rephrase what you've heard the answer to be, and then ask if you got it right, and then start over. Oftentimes, lawyers start off with an open question, and then we fall into cross-examination mode, right? No, don't. Keep looping, and getting to know your client. The open-ended questions after open-ended questions really help to, deep questions help to reveal what's going on for the client. And what Duhigg says is that through looping and proving that we're listening, you draw out emotions. And by proving that you're understanding, proving that you're listening, that you're caring. Of course, matching the client's tone and mannerisms and feeling also proves you're listening and doing our best to understand them. Because clients who feel heard will be happier clients. Christina, what's your experience with this?
Yeah, I really like looping. I feel like when you loop with your questions, your clients really do feel heard, and that in turn deepens your connection with them. They become more comfortable with you, and really, really important, they're more willing to open up. And so when you loop, it's an invitation for the client to go deeper. So for example, if I'm screening for domestic violence, I will always ask, what does conflict look like between you and your spouse? And for instance, I might get an answer that's something along the lines of, oh, we'll yell and we'll shout, maybe we'll swear sometimes. And so I'll summarize exactly what they've said to me. Okay, I understand that conflict between you and your spouse often turns into, devolves into yelling and swearing. And then I ask them, do I have that right? Which invites them to dig deeper and gets them to tell me more. And I think if I didn't ask that question, I might never get to the answer that I really want, because they may not feel comfortable. And so it gives them space to open up.
That's interesting. You said it gives them space. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, it invites them to dig deeper, right? It invites them to think about it. And I think that just asking that question and having them feel heard, right? It really makes them feel more comfortable, and then they're more willing to share.
Oh, yeah. Cool. What about you, Alex?
Yeah, very similar theme. This reference you've made to looping, bringing out emotions, was really manifest for me. Just recently, I met with a man during a consultation, their prospective new client, who presented as a real rough and ready character there. That was his personality. And he spoke briefly about his relationship with his daughter. And when I did some looping there to check in with him about my understanding of that, did I get that right? Wow, this personality type that had been demonstrated up until that moment just disappeared. He broke into tears and then said to me, I'm sorry, you promised myself I wouldn't do this. And then he went on to reveal much more deeply important factors and considerations regarding his relationship with his daughter. So, whoa, what an effective tool.
Yeah, and clearly he must have trusted you, and he felt that you had created a safe space for him to share his feelings. And that's what we want to do with our clients. We want to create that safe space so that they will connect with us deeply. And yeah, great, good job. Good. That's so cool when you have moments like that, right? And it's moments like that you want to share with somebody, and nobody gets it. What do you mean, Alex? You made a client cry? No, it's not about that. It's about us connecting as two human beings, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a satisfying moment. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a real victory. That's a gold star moment. Yeah. Okay. So that takes us to what Duhigg says is another tool called or what he calls reciprocal vulnerability. He says that reciprocal vulnerability can lead to emotional contagion. In other words, if we want to really connect, we need to share something of ourselves when our client shares a story of pain or joy. So, for example, if a client tells you a painful memory or a moment of joy, and we reveal our own pain or happiness, it creates an opportunity to connect through our having a shared similar experience. It creates an opportunity to share feelings together. And it's an invitation to open up for that person. So what's your experience with this? I'll tell you, my own experience is that I often will tell people that I've gone through my own divorce, and I don't get into all the details of it. I don't say the ups and downs and all the whole experience because it's not about me. But I can say, honestly, look, yeah, I remember, those days when we'd have to come to the meetings and so on. It was very stressful, and I kind of get where you're coming from because I've been there too. And it really has opened up people. I even have it on my website that I've gone through my own separation and divorce, and it really seems to, by me opening the door a little bit about my own life, shows that I'm a human being, and people connect with that. So, what about you, Alex? Have you ever tried this?
Yeah, boy, a couple of easy examples come to mind. I found time and again, really, when potential new clients or supporting family members explain that their occupation is that of a nurse and nursing, I can oftentimes relate to them by revealing that, back in the days when I was a student and part-time worker, I worked at a local hospital. And in that capacity, I really got to understand and therefore have a lot of respect for nursing and nurses that filled that role. And so I know where they're coming from. And oh boy, the open responses I've received by just, revealing that vulnerability, if that's what it's labeled as being. Another good example are teachers. I have a niece who's a teacher, and it's given me some insight into that occupational role. And I find that clients and potential new clients really respond to being identified with in that way, and that really helps deepen a connection and a conversation.
The other day, you told me that sometimes if someone is suffering from some physical health issues, you'll share that you have a family member who has a chronic health condition, right? And that's really opened up people around that issue as well.
That is just a reality because people can feel sensitivities, about this subject and about that reality for them. But I can, in the appropriate circumstances, reveal that my good wife suffers from a chronic health challenge, and boy, they're interested to hear this, and so that immediately opens up that deeper connection that you're looking for. Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't have to get into all the details of it or anything. You just just crack the door open a little bit, show them that you're a real human with same troubles as they have. So what about you, Christina?
Yeah, mine is similar. For instance, I had a client who suffered from a mental health issue. And I shared in a meeting that I had a member who lived with me, member of my family who lived with me as a child who also suffered from a mental health condition. And I could tell when my client was trying to tell me that about the diagnosis, that she was really uncomfortable about it. And so just by sharing my own story, and again, I didn't go into my whole life story, but just one or two sentences, just by sharing a little bit, it really enabled us to deepen our connection with each other. And she was a lot more comfortable opening up and talking about what was going on.
Yeah. That's good. Great examples, and I think a lot of, some people, I should say, are really a little bit reluctant to be vulnerable during their meeting. They think as a lawyer, they're supposed to be strong and tough or whatever. I think the opposite. I think that if you show you're vulnerable and show an openness to share a little bit about your life, people will really respect that. It resonates with people. They appreciate that, and it breaks down the boundary between ourselves and our clients. So, you have to think about it. You have to be prepared. It's like everything else. This is a tool you could use and be deliberate about it. So you need to think about, okay, what am I willing to say so that I can use this to open myself up to my client? How much of the door do I want to open? And so you need to prepare and think about it before you're meeting with clients to use it as a tool. Okay, another couple of survey questions there. Do you use looping when meeting with clients? Yes, I use it. Occasionally, it's okay. Occasionally, but I want to use it more often. Rarely. What is looping again? Yeah, it's I've known about looping for many years, but reading this book, Duhigg brings back the importance of it, and he changes the perspective because he said it's about proving that you're listening, proving that you care. So I'm using it more and more. So let's see the results there, Daphne or Shannon. Yes, I regularly, that's 36%. Regularly, occasionally 17, occasionally, but I want to use it more. That's me. That's the group I'm in. Rarely 4%, and 12% weren't paying attention. That's cool. Checking their email. Thanks for your honesty. Okay, next question. Have you tried reciprocal vulnerability when meeting with a client? That's a tougher one. I bet we'll have fewer people saying yes. But when I've done this before, some people say, yeah, I've done it, but it just sort of happened, right? It wasn't deliberately used as a tool. And again, that's what Duhigg is suggesting, is be deliberate in the use of this as a tool to connect with your client. So let's see the results here. Yes, 24% use this as a technique. Occasionally, I deliberately use it. I have occasionally used it, but not deliberately, 38%. Yeah, that's typical, is that people maybe do it, but it's not a deliberate thing now. And that's what I think we need to start being more deliberate in our choice of tools we use during our conversations so that we can build that connection. Okay, thanks. We'll move on. Okay. So social conversations are about who we are, our identity, and how we see our place in the world. Remember, our goal is to have a learning conversation, and so we can connect and become aligned. So in social conversations, it's helpful to start by finding a multiplicity of identities, and explore them with curiosity. Look for similarities where you and your client share the same identity. Now, these conversations can be difficult. They can go badly, Duhigg says. You can trigger what he calls an identity threat. This is when you say someone does not belong, or you assume that they are part of the wrong group. In other words, you get it wrong. This can cause a lot of discomfort, and you can alienate the person instead of building connection. So you have to be careful when you're exploring people's identity and having these social conversations. I did a consultation a few weeks ago where I discovered that the potential new client had quarter horses. And so I said, hey, I used to show and train quarter horses. I paid for my first university degree by training problem horses, breaking horses, and giving lessons and showing horses. We instantly bonded. We were part of a shared community, the quarter horse community. I felt a connection with my client just by sharing that with him. As a result, he trusted me and wanted me to be his lawyer and immediately retained me. At times, at the time, I did not realize what I was doing. I just had this social conversation with the potential new client, but now I could deliberately choose to do that, have that type of conversation. Last week, I was meeting with some grandparents, and they were interested in spending time with their grandchildren. And I tried to connect through us both being grandparents. I have 2 grandchildren. It did not land well. It landed like a lead balloon. No connection there. It didn't work. But I eventually found out that they both traveled in Europe extensively last year, and so did I. We did 2 trips last year. So we immediately were able to bond on that level. It was amazing. I could see the shift when I started to talk about traveling in Europe, because I was no longer a stranger to them. I was a trusted European traveler, just like them, and it was so good. We had something that we shared in common. So I often talk about being an NBA fan. That's something I can share. Another, I love canoeing. I often will connect with people when I discover they're curlers, because I love curling. And of course, when I talk about curling, it's not with people from Florida. They have no idea what we're talking about. But anyway, it's really a nice way of connecting with a client to find something, some identity that you share with them. Christine, what have you found works?
Yeah, I found that because, well, I work out of the Barrie office, and that means we get a lot of rural clients oftentimes. And I live rurally, and so I can connect with clients about living rurally. We can talk about, the bad internet, the bad roads, you can't get any cable TV, just the whole experience of rural living. And that really makes me feel connected to the clients, which in turn makes them more comfortable with me, right? I'm revealing myself, I'm a human being, and that really does make them feel more comfortable.
Yeah, we're in this group together. We're rural livers. We're living in a rural setting, right? We're brothers or sisters, right? Part of the same family. What about you, Alex?
Yeah, I guess I just reiterate, frankly, those comments I made about nurses and teachers as a group, because boy, it's hard to fake or to replicate, that feeling that you're in a common group with common interests, and therefore that's going to translate to a common understanding, and therefore deepen that communication.
Yeah, and it's not about the facts of their case or their divorce or their situation. It's about the two of you sharing a bond through your common identity. So yeah, it's interesting how that works. Okay, ask survey question 7. Have you tried finding a social connection with your client? I deliberately use this technique. I occasionally deliberately use it. I have occasionally used it, but not deliberately. I want to start using this tool more often. So yeah, it's helpful. And I would say, prior to reading this book, that I would often use this technique, but I didn't know it. I didn't realize I was trying to establish a connection between my identity and their identity. But yeah, there you go. Now I do it more deliberately. Okay, so let's see the results. 25% deliberately use this technique. So 26 occasionally. 41%, I have occasionally used it, but not deliberately as a tool. And I want to use it more often, 8%. So that's interesting. Yeah, that was where I was at. I occasionally used it, but I didn't know I was using it, right? I didn't realize that it was a tool to deepen connection. So now I can use it deliberately and choose to use it. It's in my toolbox. Okay, thank you. And we're going to just go have a few, whoops, we did that, key takeaways. And then I'm going to turn off the slideshow and we'll look at the questions. And if you want to post any more questions in the question box, we can answer them while we're still on. We've got a few minutes left. So Alex, what's this book, Duhigg's book, Super Communicators, meant for you?
Boy, I feel like I have a lot I want to say. I suppose the big takeaway, and I hope it's resonated with folks today, these highlights are, for me, have been remarkable because the book provides a roadmap to break down the various components that, yeah, sometimes, as Brian's been saying, we're just, we know intuitively where they may be part of our practices intuitively, but it makes it a deliberate act. Revealing them allows the reader to examine those components, think about, yes, their own communication in those respects, but even to work on and practice those various components so that they can become better at communications. And that for me is the real big takeaway. And I hope it's been a takeaway for other listeners today.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Christina, what about for you?
My big takeaway is really, it's about meeting people where they are, recognizing what type of conversation you're having, and then meeting them there. Matching people, match their mood, match their energy. It's really about giving them space, and the real big takeaway is just meet people where they are. Come down to their level. Don't assume, right? Meet people where they are.
Yeah, good comments. Yeah, for me, we started this webinar to talk about AI, and the AI is a tool, and I think it's an important tool we can use in our practices, and I think it's going to be beneficial. But what's more important is that we connect with our clients, and that's why I really enjoyed this book, because it really taught me how we can better connect with our clients. And it's research-based, it's science, it's not speculation or hoodoo, or it is research-based information. So I would really encourage everyone to get this book, listen to it, read it, or do both. I'll answer a few questions. One question about AI was, how do you address concerns re confidentiality when using AI? And that's a very important question. ChatGPT will, if you put information about your client into it, it's like spreading it everywhere in the world. So one thing you can do is you can change ChatGPT so it doesn't learn from you. That means it's not using your private information for others to distribute it widely around the world. So that there's a switch you can flip in ChatGPT. But and I'll answer, somebody asked about the platforms we use. One is Copilot, and the Copilot is a Microsoft tool that works with all the Microsoft products like Word and Outlook and Excel, and actually many of the many of the visuals that were created for this PowerPoint were created using either PowerPoint, either Copilot, or used ChatGPT. So the nice thing about Copilot is it doesn't, again, it's confidential. It only works on your materials, and it doesn't disseminate the learning outside of your materials. So but this is something you need to always look at, is whether it is maintaining the confidentiality of your client. Other tools that we use is, what's that legal research platform we use for memos?
Alexi.
Alexi, yes, I always forget. Alexi is really great, and it creates a legal memo using AI, and it pulls case law, and it has connections with actual cases. It doesn't hallucinate cases, but it may interpret it wrongly. So our policy at our firm is, yeah, use AI for your research, but you need to confirm that the conclusions reached by the AI are real and accurate. You don't assume that AI got it right, because we had a memo that came out of was produced by AI, and it had the wrong conclusions. It had the right cases, but it misinterpreted them. So you need to verify the results. We use Westlaw, and Westlaw also has an AI component, which helps us do legal research. So those are worthwhile. So are there any other questions that people might have?
Great presentation. I really like the looping aspect, Brian. I would use mirroring that, that we learned through collaborative practice, often repeat back to clients. So what I hear you saying is X, Y, Z, but I never took that extra step saying, did I get that right? That is that fourth step I never looped in. I just assumed, well, I've got it right, I'm saying it, but that's a good way to lock it in.
Yeah, and it also, like Christina said, it creates a safe space for the client to go a little deeper if they want to, right? It's an invitation to say, is that it? Is there more, right? So yeah, it really is effective, and we need to remind ourselves to use that tool often in our meetings.
Yeah, it sort of completes that circle, right?
Right.
You stop at the mirroring, but I never thought, there's a further step you can take to dig deeper, or confirm that's right, or maybe there's something else, or maybe it wasn't right.
Yeah. And the other point I really want to emphasize about looping is, don't just use it once. Use it over and over and over again in your conversations, right? And you'll find it more effective if you do that, right? Like I said, it often, as lawyers, we ask one good question like that, and then we start to cross-examine and we get off track. We need to always be looking for the client's values and goals and interests and what's important to them. And looping is a really good technique.
And sometimes those hidden nuances that you may not pick up without asking, you can lead to impasse, right? They don't, that's a stone that was left unturned in your initial consultation, or there's an emotional connection or something the client's not sharing with you that you may not discover until 2 or 3 meetings later.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, and although we were talking primarily about the initial consultation, because that's where you're really starting to first get to know the client, and you hope to build a trusting relationship so they'll retain you. These techniques can be used throughout the course of your whole case with the client. They're really useful to maintain that trusting relationship.
It doesn't even have to be in the collaborative setting. A lot of collaborative tools make lawyers better litigators.
Oh, absolutely. All of our lawyers are trained collaboratively, but about 30% of our cases are court cases, and we go into the way we interact with our client doesn't change. We continue to use the same tools that we use in collaborative cases, in litigation cases, in every type of case, in lawyer to lawyer negotiation or what have you. They're just good communication. And that is key, Russ. You know that. It is good communication is key to the successful practice of law.
Yeah. This has been a fantastic presentation. Such a unique perspective. I've learned so much. Thank you so much. Alexander, Christina, fantastic insight. I appreciate it. I like the horse story too. That was interesting, right?
Well, that story is I used to train horses when I was in my early 20s and during university, and you get on a horse and you have a bad ride with a horse and you're fighting them and you're struggling and you get off that horse, and then you the next horse maybe doesn't have that same attitude, right? And so I learned at that point in my life, I just have to take a deep breath and separate them. My experience from the bad horse to the new horse. And that's what we also need to do in our own practices, Russ. Like if you have a nasty conversation with another lawyer or a difficult situation with your own client, you end that, you've got to put that behind you and come to the next meeting fresh with a blank slate, open and willing to connect with the next client. So yeah,
that's a pro tip. We did have some questions coming in about collaborative practice, how to get the training. I think there's training coming up this fall, right, Brian?
Yeah, we've got a course that Jonathan and Carrie, you and I are offering. It's starting in the end of October. I'm not sure what the date is, but our website is, I think it's cptraining.com, and that's where you can learn more about the training. So we have the full training that you need to take to be able to take on collaborative cases. Yeah, so we've already got a bunch of people registered. Since the pandemic started, we've trained probably 175 or more people. There's so much interest in collaborative practice, and maybe not all of them are doing collaborative cases, but the whole approach to a file, it's really helpful if you understand the collaborative approach and understand. So it's still useful in all your other cases as well.
So if you go to the chat box, Shannon just dropped some information in. There's a link if you want to sign up. Starts October 21st. And I think we're offering a discount code for people who attend this program this week, right, Brian? If they sign up by Friday, 10%.
Yeah, don't tell everybody. It's only for people who have signed up for this course. This is for you folks, not for your friends and colleagues. But yeah, you just type in early bird when it comes up with a with the if there's any discount, and you'll get 10% off. We've got a bunch of people already registered, so we hope to fill the course over the next few weeks.
All right. Well, thank you so much. It's 12:30. I really appreciate this. Great presentation. I know hopefully the audience got as much out of it as I did. It was fantastic.
Russ, it looks like we buy our ties at the same location there.
Yeah, Value Village or whatever. Yeah.
All right. Take care, everybody.
All right. Have a good morning, guys. Good afternoon.
Thanks for doing this, Russ.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Great job. Appreciate you presenting.